What makes the current situation so critical is the unique position the United States holds in the global system. Unlike many other countries, its decisions don't just affect one region, they ripple across multiple continents at the same time. Whether it's military posture, economic policy, or diplomatic signaling, every move carries weight because of how deeply connected the U.S. is to global alliances, security frameworks, and financial systems. At the core of this influence is the network of partnerships the U.S. maintains. From long-standing alliances in Europe through organizations like the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to strategic relationships in the Middle East and Asia, these connections mean that any action taken by the U.S. rarely happens in isolation. When America shifts its stance, allied nations often adjust their own strategies in response, either by aligning more closely or by preparing for potential fallout. This creates a multiplier effect where a single decision can influence the behavior of multiple countries simultaneously. Another important factor is military capability and global reach. The U.S. has the ability to project power almost anywhere in the world within a short period of time. This includes naval fleets, air power, and rapid deployment forces that can be activated quickly. Because of this, even small movements, like repositioning ships or increasing air patrols, are closely monitored by other nations. These actions are interpreted not just as defensive measures, but as signals of intent, which can shape how both allies and rivals respond. Economic influence also plays a major role. The U.S. dollar remains central to global trade, and American financial markets are deeply integrated with economies around the world. When geopolitical tensions involve the U.S., markets react almost immediately. Investors, governments, and corporations begin adjusting their positions based on what they believe might happen next. This means that even before any physical conflict occurs, economic consequences can start unfolding across different regions. There's also a psychological dimension tied to leadership and perception. Decisions made in Washington are analyzed not only for what they do, but for what they imply. A strong stance can be seen as deterrence, discouraging further escalation. At the same time, it can also be interpreted as provocation, depending on how other countries perceive it. This dual interpretation adds complexity, because every move must be carefully calibrated to avoid unintended reactions. Another layer to consider is how quickly situations can evolve under this kind of influence. Because the U.S. sits at the center of so many global systems, any shift in its approach can accelerate the pace of events. What might have been a slow-building situation can suddenly move much faster once American involvement becomes more direct or visible. Other nations may feel compelled to act quickly, either to support, counter, or adapt to the new reality. All of this creates an environment where the United States is not just another participant, but a central force whose decisions shape the direction of events on a global scale. Every move is watched, interpreted, and responded to, making its role both powerful and highly sensitive in moments of rising tension. What makes this moment especially volatile is how the nature of modern conflict has changed. It no longer takes a series of steps to escalate a situation. Sometimes a single decision is enough to shift everything instantly. When a country like the United States makes a move, it doesn't happen in isolation or in slow motion. It triggers immediate reactions across multiple levels, military, political, and economic, all at the same time. Think about how quickly decisions translate into action today. A directive to reposition naval forces, authorize a strike, or even activate defensive systems can be executed within hours, sometimes minutes. And once that action becomes visible, whether through official announcements or satellite tracking, other countries begin responding almost immediately. There's very little delay between cause and effect, which means escalation can happen before there's time to fully assess the consequences. Another critical factor is how these decisions are interpreted. A move that is intended as defensive, such as reinforcing a base or deploying additional forces, might be seen by another country as preparation for an attack. That perception can lead to preemptive actions, where the other side responds not to what has happened, but to what they believe might happen next. This creates a chain reaction, where each side is reacting to the other's expectations rather than confirmed intentions. The speed of communication also plays a major role. Information spreads globally in real time, and narratives begin forming almost instantly. Governments, media outlets, and analysts all start interpreting events as they unfold, influencing public opinion and political pressure. Leaders are not just responding to each other, they are also responding to how their actions are being perceived both domestically and internationally. This can accelerate decision-making, sometimes pushing actions forward faster than originally planned. There's also the element of pre-established thresholds. In many cases, certain scenarios have already been mapped out in advance. If specific conditions are met, such as a direct attack, significant damage, or threats to key assets, responses may be triggered almost automatically based on prior planning. This reduces hesitation, but also means that once a line is crossed, the shift from controlled tension to active conflict can happen almost instantly. Another layer to consider is how interconnected different regions are. A single decision in one area can have immediate implications elsewhere. Allies may activate their own contingency plans, while rivals may increase their readiness or take countermeasures. What begins as a localized move can quickly expand into a broader situation involving multiple actors, each responding based on their own interests and perceptions. In this kind of environment, the margin for careful, gradual escalation becomes very narrow. The pace is fast, the stakes are high, and the reactions are immediate. That's what makes a single decision so powerful, not just because of the action itself, but because of the chain of responses it can set into motion almost instantly. What makes this situation particularly difficult to manage is the constant balancing act the United States is trying to maintain between supporting its allies and avoiding direct involvement in a full-scale war. On one side, there are clear expectations from partners like Israel and other regional allies who rely on U.S. backing for security and stability. That support can come in many forms: intelligence sharing, defensive systems, logistical coordination. But even these indirect actions carry weight and can influence how the broader situation evolves. At the same time, there is a strong awareness of the risks that come with deeper involvement. Entering a direct conflict, especially in a region as complex as the Middle East, would have far-reaching consequences not just militarily, but economically and politically as well. That's why decision-makers are constantly trying to calibrate their actions, doing enough to maintain credibility and deterrence, but not so much that it crosses into open conflict. This balance becomes harder to maintain as tensions rise. Every new development, whether it's a strike, a retaliation, or an unexpected incident, puts additional pressure on that middle ground. What might have been considered a measured response one day can suddenly appear insufficient or excessive the next, depending on how the situation changes. This forces constant reassessment, where strategies are adjusted in real time based on rapidly evolving conditions. Another layer of complexity comes from how these actions are perceived by others. A move intended as support can be interpreted by adversaries as escalation, while a restrained approach can be seen by allies as hesitation. This creates a situation where the U.S. is not just managing its own actions, but also managing expectations from multiple sides, each with different priorities and interpretations. There's also the role of internal decision-making. Policies are shaped through discussions between military leaders, intelligence agencies, and political officials, each bringing a different perspective on risk and strategy. Some may emphasize caution to avoid escalation, while others may push for stronger actions to maintain deterrence. The final decisions often reflect a compromise between these viewpoints, which can add another layer of complexity to how actions are carried out. At the same time, domestic considerations play a role. Public opinion, political dynamics, and economic concerns all influence how far the U.S. is willing to go. Supporting allies is often seen as necessary, but entering another large-scale conflict can be a difficult decision given the potential costs and long-term implications. And as the situation continues to evolve, the space for maintaining this balance becomes increasingly narrow. Each new development adds pressure from one side or the other, making it harder to stay in the middle. The challenge is not just about making the right decision, but about making it at the right time, in a way that manages both immediate risks and long-term consequences. What stands out most in this situation is how visible and deliberate the increase in military readiness has become, especially from the side of the United States. This isn't just about having forces available, it's about positioning them in a way that allows for immediate action across multiple scenarios. When readiness reaches this level, it reflects a mindset that the situation could change quickly, requiring rapid decisions and even faster execution. A major part of this readiness comes from naval deployments, particularly the role of the United States Navy. Aircraft carriers, guided missile destroyers, and support vessels are strategically placed in regions where they can respond within minutes, not days. These ships are not just defensive assets. They are mobile platforms capable of launching operations, conducting surveillance, and maintaining control over critical areas. Their positioning alone sends a strong signal that the U.S. is prepared for a wide range of outcomes. At the same time, air power adds another layer of flexibility and speed. Fighter jets, reconnaissance aircraft, and aerial refueling systems allow for continuous operations over long distances. These assets can be deployed quickly to monitor developments, support allies, or respond to emerging threats. What makes this particularly significant is how seamlessly these air operations are integrated with naval and ground forces, creating a coordinated system that can adapt in real time. Another important element is intelligence and surveillance. Advanced monitoring systems, including satellites and real-time data analysis, provide a constant flow of information about what's happening on the ground, in the air, and at sea. This allows decision-makers to track movements, assess risks, and respond to changes almost instantly. In high-tension environments, having accurate and timely information can make the difference between controlled response and unexpected escalation. There's also the concept of layered preparedness. Military readiness is not focused on a single outcome. It covers a spectrum of possibilities. This includes defensive measures, support for allies, evacuation plans, and potential offensive actions if required. Each of these scenarios requires different resources and strategies, and all of them are being considered simultaneously. This kind of preparation ensures that there are options available regardless of how the situation develops. Another factor is coordination with allies and partners. Joint exercises, shared intelligence, and aligned strategies mean that multiple countries can operate together if needed. This increases overall capability but also adds complexity, as actions must be carefully synchronized to avoid confusion or unintended consequences. What makes this level of readiness particularly significant is that it requires continuous effort and resources to maintain. It's not something that is activated lightly or without reason. When such a posture is sustained, it indicates that leaders are preparing for the possibility of rapid escalation, where delays or hesitation could carry serious risks. What makes this moment especially fragile is how deeply interconnected the global system has become, where a single escalation doesn't stay confined to one region, but quickly spreads across multiple layers of the world economy and political structure. When tensions involve a major power like the United States, the effects are almost immediate and far-reaching, because so many countries and industries are tied into the same networks of trade, finance, and energy. One of the most immediate impacts is on global energy markets. Any instability in key regions can disrupt supply expectations, especially when critical routes like the Strait of Hormuz are involved. Since a significant portion of the world's oil passes through this corridor, even the possibility of disruption can cause prices to rise sharply. And once energy costs begin to increase, the effects ripple outward. Transportation becomes more expensive, manufacturing costs rise, and ultimately consumers begin to feel the pressure through higher prices on everyday goods. At the same time, global trade routes are highly sensitive to risk. Shipping companies may reroute vessels to avoid high-tension areas, which increases transit times and costs. Insurance premiums for cargo and vessels can surge, adding another layer of expense that affects businesses across different sectors. These changes don't just impact one region. They influence supply chains that stretch across continents, affecting everything from electronics to food distribution. Financial markets also react quickly in these situations. Investors tend to move away from risk and toward safer assets when uncertainty rises. Stock markets can become volatile. Currencies may fluctuate, and governments might face pressure to stabilize their economies. Because the U.S. plays such a central role in the global financial system, any escalation involving it can amplify these reactions, leading to broader economic shifts that extend far beyond the immediate conflict zone. Another important factor is how governments respond internally. Rising costs and economic uncertainty can influence policy decisions, including interest rates, subsidies, and trade strategies. Leaders must balance maintaining economic stability with addressing geopolitical risks, which can create additional challenges at both the national and international level. There's also the element of long-term impact. Even if a conflict remains limited in duration, the economic effects can persist. Businesses may rethink supply chains, countries may adjust energy strategies, and alliances may shift based on how events unfold. This means that the consequences of escalation are not just immediate. They can reshape global systems over time. All of these interconnected factors create a situation where a single escalation triggers multiple reactions simultaneously. It's not just about military action. It's about how that action influences economies, trade, and political decisions across the world, making the overall impact much larger than the initial event itself. What makes the current moment so tense is not just what is happening, but the level of uncertainty surrounding what could happen next. Around the world, governments, analysts, and decision-makers are closely monitoring every development, trying to interpret signals and anticipate possible outcomes. When a situation involves a major power like the United States, that uncertainty becomes even more significant, because its actions have the potential to shift the entire direction of events very quickly. One of the key drivers of this global anxiety is the lack of clear predictability. In stable situations, countries can rely on patterns, established norms, and past behavior to guide their expectations. But in high-tension environments like this, those patterns become less reliable. Decisions are influenced by rapidly changing conditions, incomplete information, and the pressure to act quickly. This makes it harder for other nations to anticipate what might happen, increasing the sense of unease across the international system. At the same time, information is flowing faster than ever. News updates, satellite imagery, and real-time analysis are constantly being shared, creating a continuous stream of data that governments must process. While this provides more visibility, it also adds complexity. Not all information is clear or fully verified, and different interpretations can lead to different conclusions. This creates a situation where decisions are sometimes based on perception as much as on confirmed facts. There's also the role of public awareness. Unlike in the past, global audiences are now highly engaged with unfolding events. Social media platforms, news channels, and online discussions amplify every development, shaping public opinion in real time. This increased visibility can put additional pressure on leaders, who must consider not only strategic outcomes, but also how their actions will be perceived by their own citizens and the international community. Another layer to this anxiety is the potential for rapid escalation. Because modern military and communication systems operate at such high speed, situations can change within hours. A development that seems manageable at one moment can quickly evolve into something far more serious. This constant possibility keeps governments in a state of heightened alert, where they must be ready to respond to sudden changes without much warning. There's also the challenge of coordination among countries. Allies may share similar concerns, but they don't always have identical priorities or strategies. This can make it harder to present a unified response, adding another level of uncertainty to how events might unfold. Each country is making its own calculations, trying to balance risk, opportunity, and long-term interests. All of this contributes to an environment where uncertainty itself becomes a driving force. It influences decisions, shapes reactions, and adds pressure at every level, making the situation feel unpredictable and constantly on edge.